Welcome to another edition of Pragmatic Live. I'm Steve Johnson, Vice President of Products here at Pragmatic. With me today is Keith Fenech, who is Vice President of Software Analytics at Revulytics. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you.
Great. So talk to me about why product managers should be in tune with product usage or how they might use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, with product management, it's a role that you need to understand your customer base, right? You need to understand who you're selling to, and one of the best ways of understanding who you're selling to is, ideally, you're either sitting with the customer, watching them using your product, understanding the requirements, understanding what they're trying to get to with your product. So since obviously with most of the time it's not possible to stay with your customer, you need a systematic way how to collect that information. And by collecting information from your application and knowing how people are interacting with your features, with your functionality, with whatever you have built, you can then validate whether the decisions you take as a product manager are valid, or whether there were issues that you missed, or for example, people are using the product in a way that you never envisaged.
Tell me a little bit about how Revulytics captures that information and how product managers get access to it.
Yeah, so effectively what we do is we provide an SDK that you integrate with your software application. And that SDK, with just 10 lines of code, is a very quick integration, will start calling home to the Revulytics servers. And practically every 20 minutes or after an interval in time, that data gets captured on the Revulytics servers. It is then mined, and we present that data, the raw data to collect, into actionable reports. So we transform the raw data into product management reports. There are reports related to engineering, to marketing. So out of the box, you get a visualization of what customers are doing with your actual software. And that visualization includes both like how they are converting, what's causing people to churn, or what features are being used, what are not being used. So as a product manager, you can then understand better your user base.
So Margaret Mead said, what people do and what people say they do and what they actually do are three different things.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And we talk a lot about how, a product manager should interview people and get what they say, and even better, observe people and see what they do. But with usage data, you can actually see what they do, right?
Yeah.
So give me some examples of what product managers or others would be looking for as they visualize this data. Like what, feature stuff, usage by feature, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are various aspects. For example, you can start with the very basic metrics of, some people don't even know how, some software companies don't even know how many people are actively using their software. So just that basic metrics of, hey, do you have 5,000 people active every month, or do you have like 15,000 people active every month? That might change your perception on, your deployment or your adoption rates. So after going into those basics, you might then want to start drilling down into the actual product. So, do you have different user groups? Are they using the groups of features in different ways? So you might have a group of users who are using a set of features, another group of users using different set of features. So we had customers, for example, who by getting to know that, they changed their UI. They provided two UI options, for example, the basic mode and the advanced mode. So they observed how people are using the software and what features were being used together. They looked at the user flow analysis, for example, and then they issued a release of their software, which is, more targeted towards different user personas. Of course, there are different phases, right, in the software development lifecycle. So kind of before you're actually deploying a new version of your software, you might want to understand what target platforms you want to target. So kind of we had other customers who are looking into, should we spend, 6 weeks of QA to test on all the different operating systems? Or should we look at first, which are the operating systems that our customers have, and simply focus on that? A particular customer, they actually said they've saved, tens of thousands of dollars every release just because they avoided testing on stuff which will never be used anyway. So that's kind of pre-release cycle. And then there is obviously the post-release. So when building the roadmap, you have taken some assumptions. Maybe as a product manager, you use your gut feeling based on what you hear out on the market, and you develop features and you throw them out there. You might have even developed features because they were requested by customers. So then, like, back to your point, what people say they want and what people actually do or really need, they can be quite diverse. So looking at how people adopt those new features you implement might help you validate whether what they were asking for is actually what they actually needed. So that's something that, and we have customers who were scratching their head as to why is this happening? Why are people doing this like insane behavior with their software? Then when they dug deeper, they found out that people had these strange requirements, custom requirements. Sometimes you feel like shooting yourself when you like build this accounting package and people just use it as a calculator. So. And it varies from the very, very early stages of launching a new product or a new feature, all the way down to maybe doing A/B testing when you have different builds, or when you're going into testing, for example. We have the system also collects data related to if there are any crashes that occur, rather than crashes or exceptions. So you would be able to tackle problems before they are reported by customers, thereby keeping customers more happy. Because before they even reported or noticed the problem, you have already a build out there that fixes the issue.
I know through my career there have been a number of times when customers keep asking me for a feature that I know we have. So obviously there's something wrong in the way we're presenting the user interface. Can I get any insight in a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point. One of the types of reports that we provide is related to user flow analysis, and that literally shows you what are for example, the 10 things that people do as soon as they open the application, or what do they do once they click on this menu button. So by looking at user flow analysis, you are able to follow a user, not an individual user. You can go down to the individual, but it's sometimes more effective to look at the aggregate data and see, what percentage of users are getting lost on the step 3 of the wizard, for example. Do I have a problem where people are not understanding where to get access to this feature? So they're clicking around like 5 different items before they actually reach it. What do they do exactly after using that feature? Do they close the application? Do they move to another feature group? So, is there a way maybe for us to provide shortcuts, because people are always taking the same 5 steps to do something? And that was something that, had published actually a case study with one of our customers that it was a very old application. It was a legacy application in the CAD/CAM industry. They had over 1,200 features in this like elephant of a product, and they were at a stage where they really wanted to improve the UI, totally change the UI to a more modern look and feel. However, they wanted to first study how people were using the exact feature. So what they did is they spent around a year or so analyzing, what feature groups were being used by different users. Then they totally changed the UI to a new ribbon layout interface, and they simplified the UI in a way that all the feature groups that were used together were grouped up under the same set of functions. So customers that were using their software to do certain features, to do certain functions, were not really inundated with all the other noise of features that they didn't really care about. And with usage intelligence, that's something you can do very easily with usage intelligence, because you have all the data. They actually estimated that it would have taken them around 3 years to actually do this if they didn't have usage intelligence embedded in the product. And obviously it saved them a bunch of money, and it allowed them to go to market much faster.
Well, it's the instrumentation at the product level that we've come to expect from managing a website. Exactly. Right? I can see in a website, I can see cart abandonment, and in the analog to that would be in usage data. It's like they go through 3 steps of the wizard and then they bail, or they always take the defaults on every page of the wizard. So why the heck are we having the wizard? So that kind of visibility up to now, we've really only been able to do by observing with our eyes. And so this is pretty cool. Give me some tips on how I might use this information to persuade leadership. It seems very often we say, here are the facts, and leadership says, well, I don't like that fact. you know, or we've decided to discontinue this feature, and leadership is like, oh, but that's my favorite feature. How can we use usage data to make our point?
Yeah, so I spoke with many product managers actually that have a situation in their company where everybody has an opinion, and kind of it's sometimes it's difficult to argue against opinions of the hippo in the room, which is kind of either the highest paid person or the loudest person in the room. So I feel that by having data to back up your decisions, it would be much easier to convince anyone of what should be the route that you need to go through. So having data, sometimes if you're in a conference room with 6 people, there are 6 different opinions, right? It's who there's without data, no, everybody's right? Everybody has the right to an opinion. And exactly. And I believe you might know, I don't know who was the guy that mentioned that. If everyone has an opinion, kind of, then let's go. No, it's.
Oh, yeah. If we have the data, let's look at the data. If all we have is opinions, we'll go with mine.
Then let's go with mine. Exactly. And that's like literally what happens in such like roadmap decisions,
I mean, I know Microsoft stops supporting operating systems after 7 years, except when they don't, right? Sometimes they extend it because, oh man, did we love that OS. I know that Apple discontinues, 2 revs back or 3 revs back pretty quickly. How real is that for a typical dev team or a product team today, dealing with multiple operating systems and knowing when it's time they can safely drop support?
Yeah, so I mean, we see this very frequently. I mean, I had a chat like just 30 minutes ago with a guy up here in the industry conference, and they were saying like, listen, we have a product that's like 10 years old. We've been adding features to it. We never ever removed a feature, and the reason we never removed it because we don't want to like irate any one of our customers who might be using that feature. The thing is, we have no idea who or how many people are using it. So a lot of companies, especially with products that are like 5+ years old, they tend to drag a baggage of legacy features and functionalities that might have been great when they were launched, but the times have changed. They might have introduced new features that replace old features, but the only way to know whether or not it's safe to remove support for a particular, whether it's an operating system, whether it's a platform, whether it's an old feature, is by knowing whether people are using them. And even having said that, it doesn't mean that if you have like 10% of your users still using a feature, then you cannot sunset it. If you have a better feature and you have, replaced it with, more modern functionality, then it might be a case of educating your users to move to the new functionality. So yes, especially with older software, it's a very real problem that product managers face. And right now we're also facing a number of customers who are, or even prospects, moving from like legacy desktop into cloud. And that's, once again, is another decision that is related to this. It's like, okay, what should we port to the cloud and what should we leave behind? How do we know? Should we spend like, a couple of years implementing everything we have in our desktop application to move it to the cloud? Or should we just look at what is currently being used and how we can make it better in the cloud and, start with a clean slate? And that's a very common
very
situation.
Real right now. I was talking to a client just yesterday, and they're like, "We have our old system. We're moving to the cloud. We don't know what we can safely leave behind. What's the 20% that meets 80% of the usage?" So having product usage data would be key to that. Any advice to product managers on selling the idea of embedding, having usage data produced within the product? I mean, is this a easy sale or is this a hard sale?
Yeah, well, it depends a lot on the mentality of within the company. I mean, there are some companies or executives who are very, very data driven. There are others who still trust their gut feeling more than anything else. Sometimes data can kind of conflict with somebody's gut feeling. So that might be seen as a, oh, you know what, let's go with my idea. Don't introduce any new sources of intelligence into this office. But I would say most companies have now realized that having usage data, like that usage data has a direct revenue impact on the company, because if you're going to save time in QA, you're going to save time in the building the roadmap, you're going to make less mistakes, you're not going to throw stuff out there that is not used because you have observed hopefully what people wanted or what people needed. So it has a direct revenue impact. And this is not a licensing system where obviously you know, you have the $1 label with every license that you sell, but it's still applies directly to all the different pieces within your software development lifecycle. So you start saving money from the first day you start building the product until its end of life. So I believe by understanding this, management are now getting more data ingrained and kind of they're trusting decisions based on numbers rather than, you know, just the gut feeling. It's no longer a case. There's so much competition that there's no longer a space for you to make mistakes. You know, if you make a mistake and it takes you 6 months to fix it, kind of you're losing out against your competitors.
At Pragmatic, we've always talked about how important it is to combine your insight, you know, your judgment with data. You know, in God we trust, all others must bring data. And I can't imagine running a website without analytics. I now can't imagine running a product without analytics. And I hope that the people listening in today are embedding analytics into their products as well. Keith has written more about this topic in an article in our fall issue, fall 2019 of The Pragmatic. It's called Making the Case for Usage Data in the Product Development Lifecycle. So you can drill down on this topic. Join us again next week for more tips, tricks, and trends.